time, okay? Nuggets owner Josh Kroenke did a pretty rare press conference. And it's interesting, man. I don't know if this was always the plan. And if I had to guess, I would say this was not the plan initially.
So then why a change of heart? Why decide, you know what, let me go ahead and talk to the press and get this off my chest? Why, when you don't have to?
No, he doesn't have to. He doesn't have to, but he may have heard some criticisms of like, hey, like, okay, it's one thing to do a sit-down interview with a member of your team's media, right? And so, and not that there was anything wrong with that sequence last weekend, because bridging it to this week, it's fine. But I said to you last week, we really haven't heard Josh Kroenke in a press conference format in a few years. It just typically doesn't happen. And I'm really glad and thankful that he sat down and took questions from guys like Jake Shapiro and others today.
Well, no, that's what this is all about, is when you're the head man in charge, people want to hear from you, whether it's bad or good. We know that if you walk down the street over there with Greg Penner, he will answer any of our questions because he's a businessman and he knows that everybody has a job to do. Well, Josh is doing that exact same thing. He may not have wanted to go out there and talk to all of us, but he did. He got it off his chest because there was a lot of speculation going around from different points of views and everything like that. And now he's like, okay, let me sit down and get everybody straight on certain things, which now we can come back to and talk about and kind of find out like what's true and what's not. But I respect Josh Kroenke for doing that for us.
Yep, same. This was Josh's opening statement.
I think I want to start off by initially just saying thank you to both Calvin and Coach Malone. It was an incredibly tough decision for us for a lot of levels, but I think at the very end of the day it was a very tough decision because of the amount of respect that I personally have and that we as an organization have for both of what those gentlemen did for us while they were here. Brought us our first championship, helped establish a new culture, new standards that will continue to move on into the future. And, you know, to be frank, neither of them deserved it. And so for that, I apologize. For my position, you know, as a leader of the organization, I needed to be better at different points in time. I could see certain trends behind the scenes with the group, and those were worrisome. But when you have an incredibly talented roster that we have, an incredibly solid group across the board of people, you're able to play through some of that. And so ultimately, you know, I made the decision that I did last week with the hope of kind of rejuvenating the energy of the group and reestablishing some positive thoughts before the playoffs and some belief. And I think that we did that over the last 3 games. Hopefully you can see still a long way to go. But, you know, I think that the initial message that I want to make sure that people understand is that, you know, we give a lot of thanks for what they did. We're pushing forward into the future, and this season is not over yet.
So really that, and I watched this entire press conference, Phil, it was, that was a bit of a tone setter of the press conference. Like, thank you to those guys. They didn't exactly deserve what ultimately happened to them.
Well, let me stop you with there. Like, I don't understand that part. Thank you guys. You don't deserve this, but you're going to get fired anyway. So, like, what's the thought process? Because to me, it's like, why did they not deserve this? If things weren't going right in the building, Zach, then you deserve it. If things are not right on the court, then you deserve it, because this is all about a performance-based business, and you're the head man, and obviously you made the call because it was not right in that locker room.
No, it wasn't. And he talked about being in the locker room, Josh Kroenke being in the locker room after the Pacers loss, and he's like, this is just a flat group and a flat room right now. And I think that a part of the reason why he started off with apologizing to the guys that he fired is because he, and I'm not speculating this, I'm attaching it to the rest of the press conference and the context over 30 minutes of talking. He took a lot of the responsibility himself. Josh Kroenke did.
Yeah.
And it was one of these things where, and we talked about this, and I asked the question on a Thursday or Friday, I forget what day. It was Thursday or Friday, and I said, is it a fair question to ask that if Josh Kroenke were more hands-on and more present the way that Greg Penner is, and the phrase I used was ever-present.
This happened Thursday, by the way.
Okay, so it was Thursday.
It was Thursday.
I said, Greg Penner is ever present. If it's draft night, Greg Penner is in the war room. If it's OTAs, Greg Penner is up on his perch watching practice. If it's training camp, he's down on the sideline. He's there every single
Greg
day.
Penner is probably there right now watching film.
Yes.
Literally, watching film.
And maybe that might not be the case in 7 years after Penner is saturated in all things Broncos. And maybe this wouldn't have been the case with Josh Kroenke if this happened 8-9 years ago, because he did used to be around more, but he's not around like that anymore. And the question that I asked on Thursday of last week is it fair that Josh Kroenke is actually a little bit culpable here as well?
Yeah.
Because by his lack of presence, the toxic nature filled the void to where this was a Cold War.
Well, nobody was there to hold Calvin Booth or Michael Malone accountable and say, hey, like, we have to stick together. It's not just about, because we know that Josh Kroenke brought both Booth and Michael Malone up for a meeting. But it's like, you have to be there. And right now that you're dealing with two egos that you're going to have to babysit for a little while until things kind of get squashed and the beef gets squashed. That wasn't the case, I feel like, with Josh. Josh had a conversation probably and then left to do whatever he has to do.
Yes, and that's the thing. And that's the thing. They did have sit-downs. Or definitely a sit-down. Yeah. I don't know how many sit-downs, but there was definitely one where it's like, hey, you guys got to get along. But then if the two kids are fighting and mom and dad leaves, there's a good chance 10 minutes later that fight could reignite.
Yeah, that's when you come back with the belt.
Well, and the belt came last week with both of their firings.
But see, that's, to me, till this day, that's too late.
Like, well, for sure.
You know, like even if it's like, okay, like, why, if I'm going to bring the belt out now, I'm going to bring it out when I need to, because here soon it's going to be way too late. And in Josh Kroenke, I love that he's owning up to his part. That's part about being a leader, is being able to say, hey, like, we talked about it. It's like everybody has a piece in this, not just Josh, or not just Michael Malone and not just Booth, but also Josh Kroenke himself. So I admire that Josh did that. I just want to know why he didn't just stick with his gut from the beginning, though. Zach.
So there's criticism there. And I think part of the thing that I appreciated today was Josh Kroenke was at least open enough to, like, give the own criticism to his own self. You know, here's a little bit more from Kroenke earlier today.
You know, I'd say from my personal perspective that in any period of transition, I need to be really hands-on because, you know, a long time ago, and I told the players, I think it's important for us all as people to understand our individual journeys of how we all wound up in the same room together. I mean, the different journeys that those people have been on as players alone to get to that point in that locker room is very impressive and a wide array. But for me, you know, it really was, you know, coming out of the summer of 2013, we made a lot of organizational changes, and we helped to reestablish a culture underneath Coach Malone that I'm very proud of, and one that resulted in a championship grown organically over time. And to be frank, I'm very protective of that culture at this point. And that's why I say that I failed both Cal and Mo as a leader, because I let certain things slip to a place that they never should have been. And to be honest, we wound up making a decision last week that, you know, like I said, I hesitated on twice, and I needed to be better for the group. Checking some personal feelings, my respect for both of them, to be a better person for the overall group. And that's why I say what I said earlier. Apologize to both Calvin and Coach.
It's one of my favorite sound bites from the entire press conference. He's talking about the culture that they built up and then let slip. And he's like, if I were more hands-on, I let it slip to a place that it never should have. And although, like, yeah, the two kids are fighting, but he's blaming himself almost as the dad for not being there.
Which I feel like we all do.
Sure.
Like, as parents, we're like, you know, what can we do better for our kids? Like, it's not all on them when they start acting a fool. It's like, what part do we play in this? And then we start to come together, and we talk to our wives, and we argue, and then we come and say, okay, we need to do our part better to understand where they're coming from and what they're feeling at that time.
But Phil, yes to everything that you just said. But we've all seen the kid acting up in the grocery store because he doesn't get the Pop-Tarts or whatever, and he's freaking out.
Yeah.
That's not a problem that just started there. Like, that's a household problem. And I think that Josh Kroenke saying what he just said is like, he must have apologized to him 3 different times in there, all right? But he is saying pretty straightforwardly, I wasn't here.
Yeah.
And the fact that I haven't been here, I screwed up. I should have been here. I should have been more present, because when I left, the void that got filled was toxic. And then you try to come back, and then now you're here for a week. There too much has happened. Each guy is dug in too much into their own trench.
Well, do you feel that Josh got kind of comfortable? That when the standard is the standard. I've been here long enough to know that everybody knows their part, their job, and as long as we keep the standard, we are going to be okay. Then you leave, because at that moment when you had the standard, you have to remember Tim, and I'm telling our audience, because I know you know this. Tim Connelly was in charge. And that's different when you know that Tim Connelly's in charge and you understand and you have a relationship with him and you know he's going to make sure the standard stays the standard. But when Tim left and it was Booth, things changed. You know, the dynamic was just different. We talked about it last week. It was just a different way of approaching players and coaching staff than what Tim Connelly was doing with the players and the coaching staff. Do you think he just got comfortable? I'm talking about Josh.
Yeah, I think to a certain degree, things are kind of on cruise control. To a certain degree.
Yeah.
Because Booth was the GM of record when you won the championship. So if there's ever a team in maybe his mind, and not like he thought this out like actively, but like it's the same GM, it's the same coach, our same franchise player who's the lowest maintenance guy.
Doesn't ask for much.
Nope. And you think that you can sort of set it and forget it and worry about Arsenal, right, over in London, where he spends a lot of his time now. And the guy he's got a lot going on. And so if there's ever a situation where you think that you can set it and forget it, it's the Denver Nuggets. It's the lowest maintenance NBA basketball team. It's Calvin. He's already been here. These guys aren't new. Malone's been here for a decade. So from his perspective, maybe he just thought that it was something that it actually wasn't. And
the standard was the standard. No matter if he's there or not, things are going to be the same, and we're going to be okay.
But it slipped. Clearly. And Calvin Booth is a different human being than Tim Connelly. Like Tim Connelly and Michael Malone, they're literal as people are like the yin and the yang. They just fit together, man. Tim Connelly is super relaxed and chill.
It's like they complete each other.
Yeah.
They need each other.
But not Booth. Not Booth.
Water and oil.
It just didn't mix. It just didn't mix. But a big dynamic here is that the ultimate true leader of this franchise wasn't present. And when you're simply present, a lot of times, I say this about Greg Penner a lot, Greg Penner's not in there bossing people around, but people are just doing their job at a high level because his shadow is cast over Dove Valley because he's standing right there. An unspoken level of accountability.
Yeah, it's like us. It's like us with our kids. We don't have to say anything. Our kids know when they mess up. And when we're around, they're not going to mess up around mom. But when we're gone, they think they can get away with some certain things. That's just how it is. But then when dad comes back in the picture, you don't have to say anything. It's the presence alone that can keep somebody on track. And that's something that Michael Malone and Calvin Booth both they didn't have. They did not have Josh Kroenke walking in the building saying what's going on.
Right.
That like, are you guys okay? Do we need to sit down and talk? Because this is about the team, not about you guys.
Right. And I'm sure when he's checking in from afar across the pond, it's not, Josh, get back here, man. It's getting bad, man.
It should have been that. Somebody should have said that.
Maybe.
Josh, man, you got to get back here. Like, they're fighting like cats and dogs. Then Josh would have got on his private jet, came back here, and got to see it firsthand before it got out of hand, which it did.
Yeah. Here's a little bit more from from Josh Kroenke when asked if Jokic or any other players came to him with issues about Malone or Calvin Booth.
No. I think that my job and my role as, the relative leader of this organization is to have a read on that and understand, through a feeling. I'm not going to sit down and talk directly with some of our players. My job is to understand the feeling of the group over a period of time, and that's why I landed on the decision that I was in last week. I saw Yoke kind of was quoted somewhere, but I did tell him just very briefly beforehand, told him a decision had been made and wanted to know if he wanted to discuss it. I think, probably the local people here understand his personality as well as anybody. And so, he just kind of nodded, he understood, and onward we were. I know the players in the locker room have an incredible amount of respect for both Coach Malone and Calvin, and especially our tenured guys that won championship with him.
And here's a little bit more from Josh Kroenke talking about the mood in the locker room after the Pacers loss.
Maybe one specific that I didn't quite answer earlier was coming into the locker room after our Sunday night loss versus Indiana. I could feel how flat the room was. And, on a 4-game losing streak heading into the playoffs with a flat locker room, that was when I understood and I internalized how much I had let this room slip and that it was not up to the standards of what Denver Nuggets basketball really is.
So you hear more of that admission.
Yeah.
Of like, wow. So now he's in the locker room after the 4th consecutive loss.
And I can imagine what he's thinking literally because he's the leader of the team.
Right.
And it's like, I'm putting it all on me now. This is me. This is the reason why we're not winning games. That has to hurt you a little bit as an owner.
For sure. And he is a basketball guy.
Yeah.
He's passionate about basketball. Josh Kroenke is. So when he hasn't been around, and now you're coming back around and doing inventory on what the hell is going on in Denver, and you're in the locker room after that 4th straight loss, and it's like, whoa, this is almost unrecognizable to the group that was just having a parade. And then you go back to, what he maybe should have acted on those instincts earlier in the season. And I think that he goes into it in this soundbite when he's asked, was there an exact moment that led to the firing of both Booth and Malone?
There wasn't an exact moment. I've seen some of the reports that are out there. Some are true. Some are completely false. One of the reasons that I'm here to talk to you guys is to make sure that there's not any false narratives out there. When there's an information void around a decision like that, sometimes certain stories or perspectives will try to get filled. And so I'm here to answer anything like that. Was there a specific moment? Obviously, there was a specific moment last week. But over the course of this season, to be completely transparent with the group, there were 2 moments in time that I identified where I hesitated. And it was either out of personal feelings or belief for the group. One was last fall. I couldn't tell you an exact date. It was around Thanksgiving at some point when I was really feeling like things were not headed in a direction or up to my standards as an organization. And I saw it was reported that I would sit in with meetings with Calvin and Coach at times, which I did. And we had great conversation in those meetings, but I need more when I'm not around. My role is not to necessarily be there on a daily basis. I need people that are policing the culture and pushing it forward for me on a daily basis. And then, I think that we went on a little run before the All-Star break. That's been reported. I saw out there that I was contemplating something around then. That is true. But, when you have a roster like we do, you have the best player on the planet. It can mask a lot of things. And so, what would be crazier? Me doing what I did last week or doing it on an 8-game win streak. And so, there's no real right answer to questions that I have to ask at times. But my feeling and my belief was there was more in that locker room, and that's what I acted on.
So it's fascinating.
There's a lot there.
Yes, there is.
There's a lot there. Where do you want to start?
Well, I think it's interesting that he was like, it was around Thanksgiving last year that I thought about firing. Now, he didn't specify whether it was just Booth or just Malone. My guess it would be Malone.
Yeah.
And why do I say that? It's because Calvin Booth had an extension in front of him this season.
It was at the 1-yard line. All Calvin Booth had to do is sign the contract, and Calvin Booth will probably still be as the general manager.
Yes. So I find that interesting that he was contemplating firing Malone last season around Thanksgiving. But what's also interesting is that Shams was reporting that he nearly fired Malone before the championship. So you've thought about firing Malone basically for years now.
Yeah.
So that sticks out. But also, I have to say this, is that he said, I wanted to make the firing. That report was true that I wanted to make a firing around the All-Star break.
They went on, an 8-game win streak, 9-game?
Yeah, and ultimately he doesn't because of the win streak. But it's crazy that, and it's me saying this, so it's going to sound like I'm making it about me here.
All right.
Okay, but hear me out.
I'm about to hear what's going on.
And you might even know where I'm going with this. You have the owner of the team saying, I wanted to make a change, but they won 8 games in a row.
Yes.
Okay? You have a sports talk show host
by the name of Zach Bye
saying, guys, the Nuggets are about to go on a run. This is before they won their first game of the stretch.
Yeah.
Because if you remember, they had lost 3 games in a row leading up to that point. And I said, guys, the Nuggets are about to go on a run. They're going to win a bunch of games in a row. And I don't know if you're going to learn anything about them because these teams are going to play stink So it's just interesting that you have the instinct of the owner saying, I need to make a change. But he didn't because they won some games in a row. But even like a little peon like myself is saying that they're going to win some games and it's not going to mean much of anything here. If he really, and he's owning it, he's saying I should have acted on some of my instincts.
Yeah.
But like, it's just, it's.
How would you have felt, Zach, if Kroenke would have fired Michael Malone? Let's just say it was Michael Malone. Michael Malone during that win streak. How would you have felt?
It would have been wild, but would have been more wild than firing your coach with 3 games left in the
That's
season
what I'm
before the
saying.
playoffs start?
I feel like there's not a win here. Like, if you as the owner know deep down inside that this is wrong, this is toxic, and you need to move on from somebody, then you just make the damn decision and move on. You don't owe it to any of us to have to sit here and say, well, this is why I decided to move on. Now, when the time comes, you will have to answer those questions. But you knew deep down inside that things weren't right in that building and that there was going to be a win streak because of the teams that you guys were going to play were not good teams. That's my only thing was, and he owned up to it. Like, he probably should have pulled the trigger if that was the case. Because then you get to the 3 games left and then you decide to pull the trigger. Like, that to me is like confusing. Just do it when you felt it the third time.
Right, and that literally was the third time.
The third time. Just do it when you felt it the third time because your gut's obviously telling you this is not right.
Right. And anyone who truly follows the team and is in the trenches knew something was up from the start of the season. From the start of the season. It's like watching games. It was like, guys, I know they won last night, but it looks like they don't want to be around each other.
Yeah.
It looks like a bunch of millionaires playing a kid's game like are deeply unhappy. Like, what is happening here? What happened to this operation? So, and again, like maybe like a Nuggets like super fan would have been completely out of left field. But we've been talking about the disjointed and dysfunctional nature about this basketball team since, when was the first game played? It was back in October 24th when they were blown out on their home floor by Oklahoma City and then lost that game to the Clippers. And it's like...
Well, see, this is where it's like, I felt like Josh Kroenke felt like if I fire this man, Michael Malone, right now when we're winning games, I'm going to get a lot of heat. But if I wait it out for the perfect moment, which was, I guess, when the Denver Nuggets lost 4 in a row, where it's like, this can justify why I'm firing somebody.
Yes, you're literally, yeah.
To me, it's just like, as the owner, you got to make the decision that's best for your team. Who cares what we think at the moment? Like, what do you think? What does your players think? What does Jokic think?
Right.
This is what this is all about.
Right.
That's why I say if we were going to do it, he probably should have pulled the plug All-Star break and called it a day so that they can heal and they can continue to do what they're doing, I guess, now.
Yeah, and if you did that, maybe try to reestablish who you are with enough runway to figure it out, and not 3 games with David Adelman. And now next weekend you're playing with your season on the line. So again, but again, my biggest takeaway I think from this is the admissions from Josh Kroenke. Like, he's on it. He's like, I was not here. I should have been. I need to be more hands-on. Like, this was a large part on me for the inactivity and the absence. And the fact that, again, does it make up for it? Not necessarily, because the Nuggets lost a really good coach, and we'll see over the next year or two what kind of moves, Calvin Booth's moves, pay dividends or whatever. But just a crazy, like just the fact that we had a press conference from the owner between the end of the regular season and the postseason about what the heck just happened it's wild.
It's crazy.
It's wild. But I will say though, I think my respect level for Josh Kroenke, not that it was low or anything, because I don't have any sort of relationship with Josh. I just follow his moves, and like, he's a tree. You get judged by your fruit. And I think I walk away with more respect for Josh Kroenke for you are the owner, and he took full ownership for the situation.
That's where it starts with your leader. If your leader can take ownership when things are bad, you're going ahead in the right direction. We know we have the pieces. You have Jokic. Now you got to build around Jokic. You got to get the general manager and you got to get the head coach right. That's going to be Josh Kroenke's deal now. What can you do to help Jokic's prime out?
Yeah, and he spoke about that. And we're going to play that a little bit later in the show because it seems like everything is on the table as it should be. Okay, what a weekend it was in sports. For one guy, though,